Welcome, everyone, to SGA Civic Engagement and Social Action Series. Today's conversation is sponsored by us, the Student Government Association, and it's co-sponsored by the Office of Student Involvement. It's designed for students to learn about how they can get engaged in important issues that affect the world around them. The views in today's conversation are the opinion of the panelists only and do not reflect those of the university. As part of the series, we are encouraging students to register to vote. DePaul utilizes a platform called TurboVote to assist students in registering to vote, no matter the state they live in. You can get registered by visiting depaul.turbovote.org. In addition to getting registered, you can sign up to receive updates and reminders regarding deadlines for all elections in your area. With that, please join me in welcoming today's guest, Brianna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and just bringing more awareness to the DePaul community.
Thanks. We're really excited to have you. So you are the president, right, of DAB Social Change?
Yes, I run the Social Change Committee within DAB.
Cool. Can you explain a little bit more about what DAB does, or specifically the Social Change Committee?
Yeah, so overall, DAB is the activities board on campus. So we plan a lot of events ranging from the big concert at the end of the year fest to events throughout the year of mini golf, laser tag, all of that. But my committee, Social Change, we focus a lot on activism, multiculturalism, and current events that are taking place.
Cool. So what events have you guys had recently, or some events? You can even promote the event. I know you have an event tomorrow. What events do you have coming up, and how can students get engaged in that?
Yeah, so with the Social Change Committee, I've had in the past few weeks, I've had Listen, Learn, Change, which Ari was a part of not too long ago, and other SGA members. I'm going to have tomorrow actually a really cool event called On Wednesdays We Wear Pink, and that's going to be about breast cancer, and it's with this awesome off-campus organization named Equal Hope, and they focus on disparities that come with breast cancer regarding gender and race. So it's a great organization. And then next week's my last event for this quarter. It's going to be a Dia de los Muertos with a collaboration with DALE. So that is my events, but with other DAB events we have coming up, there's going to be a karaoke. There's this little look out for, it's going to be a really fun cooking event in next month. So keep on the eye of that, and some Halloween pumpkin themed events. So yeah.
Cool. I love karaoke, so I'm excited for that. I hope you guys have a good time, and good luck with your event tomorrow and then the last one that you have with DALE. But yeah, that's really cool that you have all of these events going on. I guess another thing I wanted to ask is just as a college student, how is it managing, social change committee with DAB, and I guess also being a college student. I guess my question, sorry, I'm all over the place, but my question is because clearly social change committee, I keep wanting to say social DAB, but the social change committee with DAB does a lot for civic engagement and social action. So what is it like as a college student also balancing those things?
It's interesting when I came into this role because I really wasn't sure how I could do it, because I really wanted to do more multicultural events and just having more cultures be involved. And it's just I'm Italian and Greek, that's not that, it's generic. I want to do more. And so my focus really has just been working with on-campus and off-campus organizations and making sure that their voices are heard, whether they're not active currently doing events, because I know with a lot of on-campus organizations, it's been hard to do events. I mean, it's been hard for DAB to do events because we're unsure of if people are going to attend, if we're going to get a good retention rate or anything. So it's just planning and just hoping for the best. I mean, that's what we've been doing, and it's been going really well other than that, but it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's just dealing with school and just having a lot of schoolwork, but also making sure that I'm doing an event correctly if it's based with the Dia de los Muertos. I couldn't do that event, so I wanted to make sure that DALE was involved, or some organization on or off campus that knew more about that than I did. So that's my biggest goal, and I'm hoping I'm doing a great job, but yeah, for the future and currently.
Cool, thank you. how is it like? I know like we're in the middle of a pandemic. We all know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. How is it like? I guess continuing work for civic engagement and social action, like with DAB's social change committee in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, it's also another interesting thing because like we've never really been through this before, so it's very unexpected, and we all had like hopes that by this point we would be back in person, everything's back to normal, but it's really not like that. So it's taken some time to adjust and making sure that everything is going by the school's guidelines, and strictly all of our events are online, but just like making events that people can relate to. That's been my goal. Like one of my first events was a mental health event with HPW, which is Health Promotion Wellness. So just talking about mental health, and then a sneak peek to some of my events next quarter, but doing stuff about relationship safety and just bringing a domestic violence group on campus to talk about that stuff. Just making sure that, people have some resources they can go to, because it's hard currently, and it's hard when we're not in a pandemic to find these resources. So I'm really hoping that people are taking these opportunities and seeing like how important this is. And especially like when I did Listen, Learn, Change, which was with SGA, I also had Chicago Votes, and they supplied with a lot of resources where students can get more involved with voting and just having a better understanding of like voting within a pandemic or on your first election. So yeah.
Cool. I love how you also mentioned a lot like collaborating with other people. So you mentioned multicultural organizations, you mentioned like Chicago Votes or HPW, and I believe there was one for like, oh, I forgot it already, but it was for tomorrow's event, right?
Yeah, Equal Hope for breast cancer awareness.
That's what it was. Yeah, so I think like one of the most important things dealing with getting civically engaged in social action is having conversations with a variety of people, and really having those, letting diverse thoughts really be the like fruit of those conversations. So I guess what advice do you have for like folks watching in order to, I guess, get more engaged in those conversations and not being ashamed of, sharing what you believe in, even if you're like in the minority in a certain situation?
Yeah, no, it's hard. Like no matter what situation, whether it's political or just in general, it's hard to have your voice out there, especially in a pandemic or just like in general. I mean, at this point, I think one of our biggest resources for like the millennial or Gen X generation is basically social media is one of the biggest platforms we could use, because there are voices from across the country, across the world, and you can have your voice go all over the place with just one simple tweet or one simple share. So I think we should implement more social media, and that is hard still because a lot of like minority voices are still not being heard. And I think it's more important that we bring more awareness to everything that's happening currently in the world, whether that's the Black Lives Matter movement or just voting in the current upcoming election within the next 2 weeks. I think just small actions count too, whether that's bringing awareness to a organization and saying, oh, I donated, or just, hey, look at this cool, like sharing just a simple Instagram post. I think like just simple tasks like that can make a bigger step for change in the future.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Okay.
Ari.
Sorry. Yeah. You brought up the like Chicago Votes event that we did. Watfa and Nisa were also in that event, and it definitely was helpful just to like hear from Chicago Votes, because it's my first presidential election. It's many of ours, so like navigating that also has been like interesting and difficult. But why do you think it's important for like DePaul Activities Board to like engage with like social action in those ways?
Yeah, so the DePaul Activities Board, I mean, everyone kind of knows them. We're like the biggest activity like planning on campus. We're the biggest event planning group on campus. So I think we have so many outlets that we can bring forward to a lot of DePaul students, no matter what grade they're in, because we have so much range with our attendance, whether it's like freshmen, juniors, graduate students. We have so many opportunities. I think it's important on our half to bring to people resources, to talk about topics that, we may talk about, but go to a deeper extent and just like acknowledging all the things that are currently going on and not ignoring them, even though a lot of our events are bumper cars or like karaoke. Like we still have that opportunity to bring people's voices together and just having everyone heard.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things you mentioned, I think, before was also like even the small things are really important. And I think that's a huge thing to consider just because a lot of the times I feel like when we think about civic action and like civic engagement and social action, a lot of the times we think it has to be something huge or big that we have to dedicate so much of our time with. And I feel like then the thought gets overwhelming, especially because we're still like college students. We were just talking about like before this about being overwhelmed with classes. So I think like what you mentioned, starting small and then growing from there. So like it can be as small as doing your best to donate to organizations that you're passionate about, just as much money as you have available, or like you also mentioned social media as well. And I think that's really like a special thing about our generation specifically with the rise of social media. And then you mentioned like one post can move like across the country or across the world, just because of how connected we are now. And I just think that's really cool and really amazing using social media as a platform as well. I do know like the tricky thing with social media is that sometimes it can also become, what's the word, like an echo cave where you only surround yourself with people who think like you, which I think it's also nice because, you know, we all have our own morals that we strongly believe in. But I think like going back to the other conversations, having those hard discussions with other people so that we can challenge how each like one another thinks. So I guess I feel like I asked this before, but now I don't remember. But like, I guess really like, how do you get out of your shell and really force yourself to have those conversations with people that you disagree with? And how do you come in with a mindset like ready to learn? I think that's the biggest thing, is that we all come in order to prove a point. We don't really enter conversations to like receive anything from them.
Yeah, it's hard. Like with social media, there's some like advantages, and there are also a lot of disadvantages. Like what you mentioned with groupthink, everyone's gonna still think the same thing, and it's gonna be hard to break out from that shell. But like I kind of mentioned earlier, you can still take little steps, whether that's learning about like a certain topic and just like, okay, I can learn about this, but I also need to think about the other side. And that can also relate to politics. Like I could be a part of one party, but like I can't, like it's hard because you just don't want to be biased towards a lot of things. And of course there's going to be biases against everything, but you also got to think that like not everyone thinks like that. So you have to just take small steps about educating yourself, reading different articles about the certain topic that you want, and just making sure that you don't have a bias towards it and you're supportive on all ends. And if you disagree with someone, you can simply say, yeah, I disagree with your point, but I hear you. I think that's one of the most important things you can say, that like you understand where this person's coming from and you acknowledge what they're saying, but you also don't agree with it. You can still like not be a part of the whole group thing, but you can also just make sure that like your voice is still being heard and not just in a collective. I think that's one of the most important things. It's hard. It takes a long time. Like I'm still trying to learn not to stick to like one thing and broaden my education, and I'm still learning every day. And I mean, other people can probably relate to that. It's just you learn something new every day, and you just got to try to adapt to it as best you can, whether or not.
Yeah, that's true. Constantly educating ourselves with all of these things. Also, I didn't just realize this, but it's actually early voting has started in Illinois. You're in Illinois, right? I think you're on campus, right?
Yeah, but I'm actually from the state of Florida.
Oh, okay.
So in the state of Florida, and the early voting, I believe, started last week. My vote, or 2 weeks ago, my vote already went in for Florida. Fun fact. So
cool. Oh yeah, we have a question. So what has been your favorite civic engagement event or activity, and why?
Oh, there's so many. I'm actually like really happy about the events I've been able to do this quarter. That's such a good question. I think tomorrow's event, I mean, I'm not just saying this because it's tomorrow, but I think on Wednesdays we were pink, which is about breast cancer. That's tomorrow. And Equal Hope, I recommend everybody to look into them. They are a great organization in the Chicagoland area that talks about the disparities that come with breast cancer. And they're just a great organization. And I'm happy with the with everything they've done. And it's just I can't stop talking about how great they are, and I sound like biased right now, but they really are. Like, they've done so much for the Chicagoland area and a lot of minorities who may not have an opportunity to get the resources they need for cancer, and they've just been amazing. And yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite events so far I've done, but I don't want to say too much about my future events, but there's some really good ones that have a big possibility of happening. So yeah, just stay tuned for those, I guess.
Cool. Thanks, Julia, for the question. We're really excited about all the events you have planned. The one tomorrow sounds really, really cool. But going back to like elections, did you make a plan and everything? Well, obviously you did. You already voted. But what was it like, I think, creating a plan for voting? I think that's one of the important things that people kind of just like throw out the window. They think like, oh, I'll just come at this time, at this hour, and not really make a plan to go, which I think is kind of dangerous, because then, sometimes then they won't go, or like they come and then there's a super long line and they don't have time to wait, especially with like us being in a pandemic right now. If you go vote in person, being in an enclosed space, I think they limit everything. So I guess, what are your tips, and how did you come up with a plan for voting?
Yeah, so I did mail-in voting, and that was one of my biggest plans, because since being in Chicago, I was like, okay, I'm gonna mail in and do this perfectly. And what I did beforehand was research all that's gonna be on the ballot, whether that's candidates or just local candidates. I made sure that I researched them to the best of my capabilities and what was available. And I mean, that was one of my biggest things. I'm like one of those people that like has to do research before looking into something, whether that's just going to a restaurant and like looking at the menu. That's like one of the things I do. But like, I thought that was important, especially with this election, because you don't want to just be like, oh, their favorite color is blue. Like, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure, that like they believe in what you want, and you don't want to vote in somebody who just doesn't have the beliefs that you do. It's just, it's not going to work out for you in the end. I'm sorry to say, but it's just, you want to make sure that there is transparency throughout when you're voting. And if you're going to vote in person, make sure like you search when your voting place is going to open, making sure that you fit, whether they have, I don't know how they're doing it in person, whether it's like scheduled times you can go or you can just line up, but like making sure that like wherever you're voting has, you can read all the directions. They'll probably be online, and just making sure, like I said, like researching the candidates that are on the ballot. That's one of the biggest things you can do, and especially being in a pandemic, and if you're not doing a mail-in vote, you just want to make sure that you're doing it safe and socially distant, because it's important, and especially wearing a mask. That is one of the biggest important things. But yeah, I think just having a plan needs to be implemented, whether like no matter what you do, whether it's just making sure that your location is close and you have enough time to wait in line, because there is that big possibility that you will be stuck in line all day. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. For folks who are watching in Illinois, also you guys can walk in and register the day of your election, even if you're not registered yet, which is really nice. And you can find more information on that at vote.org. Also, I think it's important to, like when you're preparing to vote, if you're doing it in person, I think it's important to know that sometimes the location changes between early elections and then the day of. At least that's how it's like where I'm from, where I'm from. I act like I'm somewhere different. I'm in Chicago, or actually I'm in Skokie right now. But for us, like the early voting place is different from where we usually vote. And then I think it gets really frustrating because some people will come and then they're in the wrong precinct or wrong place to vote for the precinct that they live in. I was like what do you call that? Election judge, I think, one year. And people were so frustrated because they didn't know where they would vote, so they would go in one place and be directed to another, just because they weren't ready, and they'd get mad at us, but there's nothing we can do because they're just in the wrong spot. But things like that, just getting ready to vote And being prepared. I know another thing that I would do is like I didn't do my research until I got to the place and voted, and like I'd be there for so long just because I was researching each one, because like you said, I wanted to make sure that I was voting with people who aligned with my morals. So yeah, I'd be at the polling place for so long, but I think it's important to remember that we're in a pandemic, so now I don't have like the ability to stay there for like an hour or two, not that I was there for an hour. It was definitely less than an hour, because this is my first like big election that I'm going to be voting for. But for like the smaller, more local levels, yeah, I would just be there for a while doing all the research on my phone. So I think it's important to just make sure you do your research ahead of time and like have the list of people you're going to vote for and get in and get out, so that, you know, being aware that other people need to vote. We have a long line. It's cold outside. All these little things are so important to making sure that you're prepared to vote. But yeah, do you have any other advice about like, oh, sorry, Ari, go for it.
Sorry, I was gonna say, just because Alyssa, you like brought this to my attention. I use this like website called like Ballot Ready. It's like ballotready.org, and basically you like type your address in, and it like will tell you everyone that's on your ballot and like the issues and like their stances on it. So definitely really helpful to like go through that and like, yeah, come prepared to vote. But someone has a question. It's, do you think voting is enough, or should we be doing more, especially as students?
I mean, I can speak on this, but I think, you know, voting may be enough, but it's also important, especially when you're a student and you're in like a big university like DePaul, to have your voice heard. I mean, it's hard. There's a lot of limitations on like how you can do that, but like with social media, just like making sure that you have the opportunities to have your voice heard and discuss like what issues that you're dealing with or that are just happening around the world, and just acknowledging it and not just ignoring it. Like a lot of, you know, I don't want to say this, but it's kind of true with like a lot of the posts that are made are like a lot of performative action, but you want to step away from doing something more performative and doing it for yourself and for other people. I think that's one of the biggest things, especially that came out within the most recent months, because there's been so much going on. And yeah, I just think that, you know, voting is one step you can do, but there's so many others. You can do as many as you can: voting, donating, talking just to your friends or your family about what's happening. That's another small thing you can do.
It's true. And also Thanksgiving's coming up, so then I mean, I know we're still in pandemic, but folks are going to be with their family if they're not already. And I know, if you guys know, like there's always memes about that, about fights like happening with your family and having those hard conversations. But I think that's like a really important time to have those hard conversations. But hopefully it doesn't ruin your Thanksgiving dinner. But yeah, we also have another question. So what has been the most rewarding part of being the social change chair?
Oh my gosh. That's a lot. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just being able to have a platform and just giving other organizations the opportunity to express what they want to talk about, like especially with like HPW and DALE, and on Wednesdays and on an Equal Hope. Like it's a lot. Like it's hard, especially within the pandemic. Oh my gosh. But it's hard, but like I feel like especially now we just need to have more unity as one and just giving people opportunities. And I think that's one of my most rewarding things. It's just giving students and other people in the DePaul community the opportunity to have resources they can go further along with, rather than me just talking or the person I'm working with talking about their cause. I mean, I think there's just so much like that can lead to something greater. So that's probably one of my most rewarding parts about doing all of this.
Thank you. Cool. So did you have any like last minute advice that you wanted to add, or Ari, did you have any like questions that you wanted to add before we close? Beautiful. Okay. Well,
I could say a little. Sorry.
Okay, go for it.
You know, like I'm just gonna be honest. You know, maybe you don't like the both. Well, let me speak. Okay. So, with this election, it's going to be hard because I know some people don't like one or two candidates, or just it's going to be hard to vote, and a lot of people don't want to vote. But your vote matters no matter what. And it's important that you step forward and put your voice out there and just making sure that you vote and everything, because this is like, no matter like what this leads, it's still going to be the biggest election of our time, because we have seen in a lot of states across the country that, you know, this is a lot, like this is the biggest numbers they've had. So especially within my county in Florida, this is the biggest voter registration and just voting in general they've had. So I think it's important just to simply vote and just talk. And yeah, I mean another closing point, wear a mask. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone who's watching and who asked questions. We really appreciate it. I just wanted to leave you all with reminders that SGA meets weekly on Thursdays at 6 p.m. CST. You can follow us on social media and join us next Tuesday. And remember to vote. Also today, oh, sorry. I was going to say something about today. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. But today we have Meet the Candidates. If you guys don't know, we are in the middle of elections for student government. We have a couple seats that are vacant. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to SGA's social media. But yes, our Meet the Candidates is right after this. It's at 5:30. So please go on to DHub to our events page and register so that you can join and hear what all the candidates have to say. They have a lot of amazing initiatives that they're running on, and they really want to make DePaul a better place. So please go support and ask questions, because I know that they'll appreciate it. And also don't forget to vote in our elections as well as the country's election. So yes, thanks, and have a nice night, everyone.